TYG, that's right. You know what? You are so pretty. And you smell good. I smelled a few of you. If you would do me a favor, I do this everywhere I go, all over the world, and it makes people feel even better than they feel already instantly. Stand to your feet, if you would. Turn to the person next to you. Say this with all sincerity and then give them a big hug. Say this, turn to them and say, "You look good this morning, baby." Now give them a big hug. You may be seated. Watch yourselves, watch yourselves. I'm so excited to be with you. Title of my brief presentation is Amped for Life. Anybody in the room amped today? When I was a kid, my mother wanted to take me around the world, but we were poor. I say we were poor, but when I told my mother we were poor, she said, "No, we weren't. We couldn't afford the OR. We were po." Any of you in the room ever been po before? So my mother did something really interesting. At the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, they had travel logs. And these travel movies were hosted by professors at the university. And every year she would get the schedule, and then she would say, "Hey, this year we're going to China, Russia, and India." And we would go to these free travel logs, and we got to hack our way around the world for free. But then I would go over to the Olsen Planetarium, and I would go on a tour of the universe. And I became fascinated with the stars. Our galaxy is called the Milky Way. It's beautiful. Our galaxy is 100,000 light years across. A light year is the distance you could travel in a year if you could travel at the speed of light. Does anybody know what the speed of light is? 186,000 miles per second. So for perspective, that's New York to LA 60 times per second. So if you could travel that fast without disintegrating, it would take you 100,000 years to go from one side of our little galaxy, the Milky Way, of which there are billions of galaxies. It would take you 100,000 years to go from one side to the other. Down in this little corner is our solar system that has our sun. There are 400 billion stars in the Milky Way, 400 billion of which our sun is an ordinary star. The sun being 93 million miles away from Earth. So if you could imagine how big something has to be in order to be that big, to be seen with the naked eye and felt on your skin. And there are 400 billion of them in our galaxy, and our galaxy is cold, if you could imagine that. So Earth is tucked in our little solar system down in the corner, and for perspective, Earth would be the equivalent of a grain of sand in Neyland Stadium. Tiny. 100 billion people have lived on Earth since the beginning of time. 7.5 billion people live on planet Earth right now. 7.5 billion people, of which you are one. Turn to your neighbor and say, "I'm one, baby, I'm one." Yeah, you're that one. Now, if you know anything about the birds and the bees, and how many of you know something about the birds and the bees? Any participants? Watch yourself, watch yourself. When we come together to do that unique thing that we do, every time that we do it, there's a 1 in 400,000 chance of a unique pairing of one egg, one sperm. To create a unique individual, you have to have one specific egg, one specific sperm to create that individual. If it's anything other than that unique pairing, you have something else. So that was your brother, your sister. So in order for you to be in this room today, every single person in your bloodline had to be exactly who they were when they were from the beginning of time, which means that everybody in your bloodline had to exist for you to exist, including your crazy uncle. So if you think about that, what are the chances of you being born in a vast universe like this, on a planet, the only one we know of that hosts life as we know it? They ran the numbers, and at MIT they found out that the chances of being born ever to exist 1 in 10 to the 2.6 millionth power. So, if anybody ever says you're 1 in a million, you tell them you shot too low, baby. You shot way too low. Turn to your neighbor next to you and say, I'm special, I'm real. When I think about the vastness of the universe and the chance of being born, I think about every person in this room and that you were placed here on purpose for purpose. You were plucked out of the ether and placed here out of an infinite number of options. So we're here to do something with our lives. We're here to get amped for life. And so I want to share some principles and have some fun with you in the few moments I have. Can we have some fun this morning? All right, let's get to work. I think you get amped for life, turned up, if you will, if you vest your life in wisdom. Here's my definition of wisdom. Wisdom is highly developed skill and insight applied for the right reason at the right time to produce the right results. So here's my main thesis. We don't strive for and become great to be known or remembered as great. We become great so we can leverage that greatness to make something or someone else greater. We exist to add value. And how do we do that? How do we amp ourselves for life? First is with purpose. You have to have purpose. So the first thing I would say to you today is make a difference. Turn to the person next to you and say, you better make a difference with your life. No, tell her. You got to tell, yeah. I'm watching you, so you got to tell her. She needs to know that. Make a difference with your life. So what does it mean to amplify? I love these words. It means to turn up. How many of you like to turn up? Magnify, intensify, increase, boost, step up, or raise. That's what you do to amplify, but you need an why. Why do you do it? Which brings me to a story. I am a nerd by both confession and confirmation. Any nerds in the room this morning? Yeah, and they're all up front. I don't know if you noticed that. You know how you know when you have nerds in an audience? If you ask, are there nerds? You know what we do? We self-identify. Woo! Here we are. Well, I'm a nerd by confession and confirmation. And I remember I got bullied. I was bookish. I was a mama's boy. I like to read the encyclopedia. This is before Wikipedia. We had the Britannica and the World Book. Some of you may be too young to know about these books we held the information. Any of you know about this? See, the World Book had those beautiful overlays, and I loved that. So I would read the encyclopedia, but if the bully saw you reading encyclopedia, they saw you as fresh meat. And I remember pulling up at a new school. I'm sitting in the car next to my father, and I see a gaggle of bullies in front of the school, and I go, oh no, I will have to engage my superpower. All nerds have superpowers. Mine was speed. It's a very functional superpower. So I waited till the bullies turned their back, ran straight into the classroom, sat in the front row so I could be in the teacher's pet zone. I thought there was protection there. And I'm sitting there, I go through a couple of days at school, I've made it past a couple of days worth of bullies, and I look to my right, and my journey is disrupted by a pretty little girl. I turn to the right, and my heart is just like, dum, 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 dum. She had these long black pigtails that were tied off with these red barrettes. And when she would snap her head around, they would spin in slow motion. I was eat up, and so I decided to give her the LPQ. We used paper then. I pulled out a sheet of paper and I wrote, do you like me? Check yes or no. I nervously handed it over to her. She opened it up. She smiled, and then she handed it to her friend, who handed it to the next friend, who handed it to the next friend, and they're all laughing. I guess in today's language, she retweeted me. When I got it back, she had checked no. She was super popular, though, so I thought, well, at least I can use her for information. I said, who's the fastest kid in the room? She said, him. Him? Him. When I grew up, we had a cartoon called Charlie Brown. There was a character known as Pigpen. He had a cloud of dust around him. This kid was that. He was dusty and musty. And I did not evaluate him to be someone of great speed, but he was. I walk over to him. I thought if I could show the entire class that I'm the fastest kid. And so I go over to him and I challenge him to a race. I go, you want a race? He goes, yep. You, me, high noon on the playground. We get out on the playground. The starter kid goes to the other side of the playground, puts his hands out and goes, ready, set, go. Take off running. I'm like, ooh-wee. When she sees me run, it'll fix everything. Running, I look up, and all I see is his back. And everybody in the playground is like, ooh. Re-nerdified. Walking out, get in the car next to my dad, I said, Dad, we have a problem. My father's old school. He was born in 1923, Chattanooga, Tennessee, a man of the Great Depression, a man of few words, and a man who believed in personal responsibility, which is one of the greatest things you'll ever do, is take responsibility for your life, your choices. So my father said in response, we don't have a problem. I'm good. You have a problem. What's your problem? I said, Dad, I'm running a technology deficit. I noticed that my friend had something that I didn't have. I said, I need this so that I can race more effectively. He said, what's that? I told him. And now the reveal. That was the state-of-the-art shoe. This is pre-Jordan, right? Converse All-Stars. I went to the store, I saved up my money. I remember I put my money on the counter. The lady brought the shoes out. She pulled back the tissue paper, and when she unfolded the tissue paper, literally, shards of light started to shoot up from the box. Angels started to sing, and she laid them out before me, and I put them on. And as soon as I put the shoes on, I felt a surge of confidence and competence. She said, let me put them back in the box. I said, no, I'll wear them out. Fast forward to the next day. I get up at the school, the gaggle of bullies in the front. Today, I did not run. I slow walked them with a Denzel swagger. Sit down next to Lenora with a shoe out. She said, no. I look at Sam across the room. You, me, noon. We get back out to the playground. Notice the shoes are red. I was going for blood. Starter kid gets on the other side of the room. Ready, set, go. Ooh-wee. Running as fast as I can. And I look up and I see the holes in the bottoms of Sam's black dirty Converse. He dusted me off again. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's not the shoes, baby. It's not the shoes. I was running to make a point. Sam ran every day because he wanted to be an athlete. He didn't want to be an athlete because he wanted to be an athlete. He wanted to be an athlete because it was a path to getting the kind of money that would lift his family out of poverty. I was running to make a point. He had a purpose that was bigger than himself. Life really gets good when it stops just being about you all the time and you start to live on purpose. You should live with purpose. Here's what we found out. You should have purpose which leads. So preparation becomes the most important second step. Prepare. Turn to your neighbor and say, prepare for greatness. Say it again. Tell him. He didn't hear you. You, right? Yeah, you. Tell him. Thank you. He needed to know that. Thank you. So what about preparation? The first thing you have to do is you have to believe. The opening act of leadership is faith. You have to believe a thing before it happens. You have to believe in it. And I want everybody in this room to do whatever it takes to stoke your belief. Carol Dweck in her book Mindset said there are two types of people, fixed mindset people and growth mindset people. Growth mindset people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. Virtually all great people have had these qualities. You first have to believe as part of your preparation. Which brings me to Wynton Marsalis. Had a group of musicians that he was working with, and they played a wonderful passage. They were teenagers. The keyboard player did a wonderful pass, finished the song. It sounded beautiful. Played that passage with doubt. And Marsalis picked up on it. And this is what he said. He said, "You didn't like what you played, did you?" He said, "Not really." This is what he told him. He said, "What you think is what comes through when you're playing. So the one thing you always have to have when you're playing is hope. When you lose hope and you think to yourself, man, what am I going to do with this? You're not going to do anything with it because you already projected that. I felt you think that." See, you have to first have purpose, but as you are preparing to do something great with your life, you've got to believe with everything in you, because people feel when you don't believe in what you're doing. You have to prepare for greatness. The first phase of that is your faith, is your mindset, is what you believe. So I have these three phases when I'm working with artists in particular: get ready, get noticed, get paid. Turn to your neighbor and say, get ready, get noticed, get paid. The most important part of this, though, is the ready phase. Most people don't want to do the work of readiness. Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours of effortful study to achieve mastery. You achieve mastery so that you have facility. You on demand. You want to be able to use your skills on demand so that when you're called upon to produce that thing that you're known for, you do it effortlessly and creatively. You don't have to think about the application of skill before you apply it. It natively breathes out of you, and you can only get to that through a high level of preparation. I've worked with a number of artists, but currently I'm working with a young man. Any of you know Chris Blue? Now, Chris is the season 12 winner of The Voice, but we started working on his journey about 6 years ago. And what's interesting, we sat down and we did a visioning process, and I would encourage everybody in the room to try this. Pull out a piece of paper and write down all the things you would do, have, become, or contribute if there were no possibility of failure, if you couldn't fail. Now, here's what you're going to find out. First of all, it's hard to think without limits. First time we did this exercise, we both kept limiting ourselves down to the boxes that we were familiar with. So the first blush will be just trying to push past your own self-imposed limits to imagine a life you haven't imagined heretofore. So we started imagining things that were outside of the box that he had been in. Once we imagined several things that he wanted to accomplish, then I asked him this question. I said, what skills would you have to have mastered such that if opportunities arose, you could take advantage of them? Because they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So I can't control the opportunity cycle, but I have definite control over the preparation cycle. So we identified 5 or 6 skills, and he started working on those every day for 3 years leading up to going to try out for The Voice, which is something nobody knew. When he was on The Voice, for 16 weeks straight, he would work 12-hour days on set, and then he would spend 5 hours every night preparing for the next day. He learned to embrace the preparation with joy, and he was functioning at a much higher level. Chris has done really well. He won The Voice. We just did 3 sold-out shows at the Tennessee Theater, but it took a lot of people to make that happen. It took about 65 people to pull those shows off. And I was watching what was happening as they responded to his level of preparation. See, the people that work around you, when they see that you're all in, fully vested, that you are highly skilled at what you do, it inspires them. And there's a big difference between what people are required to do and what they're inspired to do. Requirements are always about minimums. It's checking boxes, it's punching the clock. But when a person is inspired, they will give you their A game plus 10. And all of that is born of preparation. So you have to convince yourself that everything that you do has to be built on a platform or a foundation of a high level of skill, and you only get that through preparation. Turn to your neighbor and say, prepare, baby, prepare. This is what Aristotle said. Excellence is an art won by training and habituation. We do not act rightly because we have virtue or excellence, but we rather have those because we have acted rightly. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Next is power. Turn to your neighbor and say, power, baby, power. Did any of you ever watch He-Man? I have the power. So what I want you to know here is use your power to empower. Now, you move to a higher level of purpose-driven, amped-up thinking when you move from trying to get power to trying to give power. We call it moving from power trips to power strips. So instead of you trying to get all the power, you find yourself plugged into a source where you're actually disseminating power to other people. Because I'm telling you, when you believe, when you have purpose, when you have a high level of skill, you will create a lot of power in your life. But on top of that, it's for you to give to somebody else. So use your power to empower. And finally, let's talk about productivity. Productivity. Here we go. Productivity. One thing I want you to know is that you should focus on results, not effort. Turn to your neighbor and say, focus on results. No, you got to tell him. You got that, right? All right. So just so I don't offend anyone, I like from time to time to put pictures of great ministers up on the screen, okay? And I'm about to put a picture of one of my favorite ministers on the screen. Do I have your permission to do that? All in favor say aye. Aye. So nobody will be offended, right? We're good? Okay. Here goes. This is one of my favorite ministers. He's delivered one of the most powerful messages I've ever heard. Bishop Yoda... Bishop Yoda had a seminal message in which he said these words, do or do not, there is no try. One of the greatest things you can give yourself to amp up your life is focus on results, not effort. I remember one time this guy asked me to produce a report. I turned it in a day late, but probably 10 times more excellent than he expected. He threw it in the trash. Said, Hallerin, I don't pay you for effort. I pay you for results. This was due yesterday. An excellent report a day late is not good. You have to focus on results. And you have to ask yourself on a regular basis, am I getting results? Because look, we're all here to do something. It's, are you creating value in what you do? So here's kind of a little model that I created. The black is the amount of work you do. Outside the black is the value you create. You should always be creating value and leaving things better than you found them throughout your life. Right now, you get paid for the work that you do and a little bit of the value you create. As you become better at your craft and your art, people pay you for the value you create and the work that you do. You get a little bit better at what you do, people just want you in the room. You have a track record, you've created value in the world, so they pay you for that and that. You get to be Quincy Jones. When he walks into a recording studio, he doesn't have to press one button. Everything gets better. They just want him in the room because of the value he creates. And as you live your life, you will go through your life and you will leave something behind of value that you've created. You've left something in the world because you work to create value and you work to get results. The saddest to live is the one in which you go from job to job and you just work and you work. You were selfish. You never tried to create any value. You work, you work, you work, and we don't even know you were here. You got to get results, and you have to create value. See, you were plucked out of nothing to be something on purpose. We get amped up. We get turned up. We modify our lives when we make a commitment to do something with our lives that's great. Number one, to make a difference because we have a purpose. Number two, to prepare for greatness, we invest in preparation. Number three, to use our power to empower, to make something or someone else greater. And number four, to focus on results, not effort. Because here's what we believe. We don't strive for and become great to be known or remembered as great. We become great so we can leverage that greatness to make something or someone else greater. We exist to add value. And if you do that personally and professionally, you will be amped for life. Thank you. God bless you.